Just a second. Yeah. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third session on dignified menstruation. So, I'm honored to be present here as the moderator for today's session, and I want to thank all of you for taking out your time to be here on Saturday evening. I am Kamla Lama, the Outreach and Development Manager for Hamro Bahini program. Um, please be mindful if your mics are turned on. Thank you. So the topic of menstruation is often, overlooked and stigmatized, right? So, but it is very crucial in the aspect of, women's health and rights. So I believe that by having open and honest conversation about menstruation, we can work towards a world where everyone has access to safe and dignified menstruation products and education. So त्यसैलाई लिएर चाहिँ आजको हामी यो सेसनमा आएका छौँ. So I hope you guys are equally excited. I am very much excited for this session. So, Azuka session, we will be mainly discussing about various issues surrounding menstruation, including, lack of access to menstrual products, the social stigma attached to menstruation, and the impact of these issues on marginalized communities. Because being mindful that the second page of this Hamro Bahini program is about reaching out and, going to communities and spreading awareness about the SRHR, sexual and reproductive health and rights. So त्यसैको सन्दर्भमा चाहिँ आजको entire session चाहिँ design गरिएको छ. So in this session, I really encourage all of you guys to be open-minded and respectful of one another's opinion, and let's work together to break the taboo around menstruation and strive for a world where everyone has access to the resources and education. Um, so Itine Bhande, thank you all being here and let's begin our discussion. So next slide, please. So as usual, हामी आजको सेसन चाहिँ हाम्रो बहिनी प्रोजेक्टको भिजन मिसन र कोर भ्यालुजलाई लिएर चाहिँ स्टार्ट गर्दैछौँ. So these are so हाम्रो बहिनीको मिसन भन्नुपर्दाखेरि चाहिँ our mission is to empower adults and girls through community intervention and education on sexual and reproductive health by creating a safe and inclusive space. Whereas the entire team, entire community of Hamro Bahini, we envision the world where each girl has access to quality SRHR education, create an equitable and just society for them. Moving on, there are a couple of there are total 6 values which represents the fundamental beliefs that guide the actions and decisions of our program. So these core values are very much expected to shape the entire program and define organizations, this program's culture and identity. So we really expect, our SRHR champions to take these core values as a guide for your behavior or any kind of decision making in future to help you guys align the actions with the program's mission and goals. So as a co-session start going agadi, I have brought some key highlights from our previous pre-session survey butter, but then these are the key topics that we will be discussing over. Thank you, Prakriti. So, हामी चाहिँ dignified menstruation बारेमा कुरा गर्दा गर्दै there will be a couple of discussion where we will have group activities. Actually, one step back, please, Prakriti. I'm so sorry for this technical glitch. Back. Can you move on to the agenda section? Thank you. So similarly, हामी चाहिँ open case को बारेमा पनि discussionहरू गर्छौँ. I hope you guys have gone through the cases that we have provided over emails. Similarly, we will also having this discussion over how we can initiate conversation at the community level about having dignified menstruation, or how do we break all these social and cultural taboos, or how do we even create a safe space for in different communities basically. So we will be covering all this aspect in this today's session. So similar, we'll have a couple of group activities where we will get to reflect and channels the key values, key aspects of dignified menstruation. Next slide, please. So before we begin, I'd like to, take a moment to express my appreciation to all of you who took out some time and complete the pre-session survey. So your input are very much valuable for us to understand and address your needs to design these sessions in a way that actually creates an impact. So the key highlights from the survey have been able to, so there were thoughts around menstruation. There were a couple of ideas were very much interesting. I found it very interesting to read actually. So um, there were certain things were they were very much exciting. Let's say तपाईँले स्क्रिनमा पनि देखिरहनु भएको छ. So what is menstruation भन्दा it is a natural biological process for some girl or some women which also comes with certain physical or emotional or mental changes रे कि. So कस्तो ब्युटिफुल कुरा छ नि त. यसैमा भन्नुपर्दाखेरि there is अर्को aspect is there the indication for a woman to know her body is functioning properly कि. So when a girl is experiencing menstruation and when someone is not, so there is this a balance, a disbalance of or at least there is this indication that a woman can figure out whether her body is functioning properly or not भनेर रहेछ कि. So these are some important thoughts that we have collected over the survey. Next slide, please.
Wait.
Mm, let me mute you. Sorry. So we've received total 30 responses for our survey. So as you can see in our screen, there was this question where we asked if you have ever felt ashamed or uncomfortable about menstruation, either personally or while witnessing someone else's experience. And the results see is very interesting. As you can see, over 65% have felt ashamed or uncomfortable about the topic menstruation. And this is something I really look forward that today's session could help with. We could come out, by the end of the session, we will have a different perspective. We will have a different mindset on the topic menstruation. Next slide, please. So thoughts, sorry. Yeah, and this is another very interesting data that we have found in through our survey. So the question goes, do you have experience initiating menstruation health conversation in a community? And it's quite interesting to, even find out that there were over 42% who were actually, taken an initiation to start the conversation around menstruation. And having said that, there are still 50% population within us who still finds it very difficult or even or have never initiated a conversation around the menstruation. So it's very interesting to know that even we all of us coming from certain backgrounds, certain education backgrounds, certain culture and having so-called modern life. So I really expect, by the end of this session, we will be able to, change this situation here. Next slide, please. And these were some of the experiences from we collected over this survey. So it's so interesting that some of you guys have actually taken initiation at the community level at your own college and schools. So I will be sharing these slides with you guys later. So I hope you guys will be able to go through all of these interesting insights we have collected over our survey. Next slide, please. So talking about the taboos and stigma and taboos and stigmas that we have collected, there are key things, these are some insights from shared by you all. So be it burying your clothes menstruation used over your menstruation cycle, or eating certain kind of foods and restricting certain kind of food, you not being us not being allowed to enter temple or kitchen, or even uh, being forced to not sleep with our husband, or being forced to not touch the plant because of the fear that it might die. So these are the factors, these are some of the taboos, stigmas and social challenges that we find in a daily basis. So these are the factors that we will be addressing in our session today. Next slide, please. And these are some key aspects that you guys were expecting to learn from today's session. So we have tried to cover some of key aspects in our session today. So I will be discussing some interesting things later in our by so basically at the end of our session about the laws and the practices here in Nepal, what can be done, what are the things that are being done in Nepal to have the safe menstruation practices. Next slide, please. So thank you, Prakriti. So, without doing a further ado, I'd like to introduce you all with our to our speaker of today's session. She is none other than Ayesha Amin. I'm sure you guys have already read about her in our flyers and her bio introduction document that we have shared over email. So Ayesha Amin is the founder of Baithak. She is a gender equality activist with over 8 years of experience working in national and international organizations and forums in the field of gender based violence, gender justice, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. So she has done her MS in social policy from the University of Pennsylvania on the Fulbright Scholarship and was a specialist mentor for the inaugural cohort of Community Engagement Exchange Program um, conducted by the US Department of State. So I'd like to hand over the floor to Aisha. Aisha, sorry, yeah. So Aisha, the
Thank you.
floor.
Thank you so much, Kamala, for sharing all the insights from the survey and for getting us started. Hi, everyone. How are you all doing? So what you can do is you can, I think someone has their, okay, use an emoji to share how you are doing. So if you can see the reactions, can you see the reactions on the bottom of your screen? Yeah, so pick any reaction that you want to express how you are feeling. And even if you're not feeling great, that's fine. This space is open to any feeling, any emotion. Okay, perfect. So before we jump into some discussions around menstruation, I want to know a little bit about you. So in the chat box, respond to these three questions. I can already see your name, so that's amazing. Write what city or what part of Nepal you belong to. What are you doing? As in, I think most of you are students, but please mention like what are you studying. And third, write a fun fact about you. Clear enough? So, what part or what city you belong to? What are you studying or what are you doing? And a fun fact about you. So, okay, Sumit has already mentioned, has responded. Okay, that's some great speed that we have there. Sumit is a student. Janakpur, okay, MBBS. So this way I also get to know about cities in Nepal. Amazing. Student, also write a fun fact about you. I'll give you an example. So my name is Ayesha Amin. I mean, we can see each other's name. I am a SRHR expert and advocate. I am from Pakistan. I'm from Karachi, Pakistan. And a fun fact about me is that I've been to around 25 countries, and Nepal is one of my most favorite countries I've been to. So, someone says I can sleep for a whole day. Oh, I can do that too. That's my favorite thing to do. Amazing. So, we have someone from Navalparasi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but yeah. Okay, so mostly students. Anyone who can give us a fun fact? Listening to music, amazing. Novels, amazing. I just gave a modeling audition today. Oh, amazing. So we have a model here, Sukriti, amazing. Fun fact about me is I speak a lot, but never get headache. I think that's a valuable skill that you're going to use in your advocacy. I love running and running away from problems. Rita, I can relate to you. I love running from problems too. Amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all these fun facts, what you do, what part of Nepal you are from. It's great to just know a little bit about you. So now what we'll do is in next, hopefully 1.5 hours, we will understand the idea of menstruation. We will understand the idea of dignified menstruation, but we'll also learn how you can initiate these conversations in your own communities. This is a very safe space, and it's okay if you feel a little uncomfortable, because I saw around 35% people also say that they're uncomfortable around this topic, which is completely okay. Some discomfort is okay to learn. So I invite you to jump into this space with all your discomfort, with all your curiosity, and with all your fun facts as well. Um, I want you, especially like all the women in the room, all the men can be great listeners at this point, but all the women in the room, I want you to reflect on the first day you got your first period. Can you raise your hand and share if you remember the very first day when you got your first period? You can digitally raise your hand if you remember it. Okay, Sukriti, Kamala, amazing. Okay, so I'm going to put everyone's. Okay, so a lot of people actually remember how they the first day they got their first period. Would anyone like to share, maybe like in a few seconds, of how were you feeling? What did you feel the first time you got your first period? What did you thought it was? Who told you what it was? What kinds of emotions and feelings were you experiencing? So, Anjali, do you want to share? Maybe like in a few seconds.
Yes, sure. Firstly, I was so scared, and I called my mom, and she told me you are having periods, and she bring me a pad and multi use gare, अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ I was supposed to stay in a separate room.
Okay, so your mom told you, and then you were also asked to stay in a separate room, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anjali. Yes, Sukriti, I believe that you are the one who had your modeling audition. So, yeah, you want to
Uh,
share?
Hi. Hi, first of all. Yeah, my friend just called me today and I was like, do you want to come? I was like, yeah, what the hell, let's go for it. My first period was it was actually during Dasai, that is our biggest festival, and it was like 8th day of Dasai. Like we were supposed to go to Lamjung, that is my village, and I saw a spotting, but I didn't actually know what it was. I knew what a period was, but I actually didn't have any first-hand experience, or nobody told me what it looked like. So I was supposed to travel to Lamjung that day, and I had no idea that I got my period. But as we travel like 6 and 7 hours after that, and I was wearing a white pant that day. So and after that, like my mom saw that, and while in festival it's especially more we are secluded from the temple, from the place we pray, and I was not allowed to put on tika that time as well. And it was very difficult to get the sanitary pad as well, and I felt very bad at that time because I couldn't celebrate my best festival, and I didn't know what it was, and I traveled a lot that day, and yeah, it was very memorable that time, those 4 5 days. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sukriti, for sharing your experience. Uh, Prashamsa, I'm really sorry if I mispronounce your name. Please feel free to correct me. But Prashamsa, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, good evening everyone. I got my period during the earthquake of Nepal, Baithak 12, 2072. And I was lucky that I didn't have to stay in a separate room. And I was free to go to kitchen. Yes, that's it.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Subeksha, do you want to share?
Yeah, first of all, good evening, everyone. So, talking about my first period, it was when I was in class 7. So, I actually got it just after my lunch break. And I was already told about what is period, what to do if it comes to you by my mom. And in the class, I just felt that, okay, I'm having my periods. And I again asked my class teacher and went to washroom to check it. And after that, okay, I got to know, okay, I got my periods. I was very anxious at that moment. And like, even though I was told by my mom, okay, you are going to have this, and I was prepared in some extent, but even though I was very anxious, and then I just went to our infirmary and got the sanitary napkins and used it, and shared with my one friend who was sitting by my side, and she just consoled me at that time. So yes, that was my first experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. There are some responses in the chat as well. So you can see we heard from 4 or 5 people in the room, and everyone had some sort of, to a certain extent, everyone had a different experience depending on who was around them, what was the context, whether or not they knew. And you also see a lot of, so someone shared that they were fortunate to go into a kitchen, like they were fortunate to go and go to kitchen, which means that so many girls and women are not allowed to enter certain spaces during the period. There was someone who shared that they had to stay in a separate room. There was someone who shared that they had to miss out on festivities of their favorite time in the year. They could not access menstrual products. So while the experience can differ, menstruation continues to remain a stigmatized topic in our society, unfortunately. And there is so much young girls go through the first time they get their period. It's not only there are a lot of physical and emotional changes that young girls go through when they get their first period, and a lot of times they have no idea what's happening to them. And this is why we are here discussing what menstruation is, what dignified menstruation is, what menstrual dignity is, so you can go into communities and have conversations with young girls, their parents, their teachers, so that every girl can experience menstrual dignity, can have access to menstrual products, can have access to information. So on this note, we will jump into some in-depth discussion. I would highly appreciate if you, like you were responding amazing in this amazing way. We will try to keep this session interactive. This is how I've designed the session. So please feel free to use chat, and whenever we'll also take some responses on mic. Please feel free to share your experiences. Feel free to share your insights. Feel free to share your questions, so we can have a good discussion and conversation around this topic. I'll quickly share my screen. Just give me a second. Okay. Let me know if it is visible. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, perfect. So I think that you all, based on the responses in the survey, most of you are very well aware of what menstruation is, at least like the biological perspective of menstruation. But what is important to also know that menstruation is just not bleeding, it's far more than bleeding, especially when we add a very cultural context to it. It's the start of a new phase for a girl who gets her first period. A lot changes in her life. Um, so again, it depends on the context, but a lot of young girls, when they get their period, are secluded from day-to-day activities. A lot of girls are not allowed to play outside the day get their first period. A lot of girls also are forced to marry as soon as they get their first period. So a lot changes in a woman's body, in her lives when she gets her first period. And so it's a lot more than just bleeding. Your body also goes through a lot of hormonal changes. It goes through a lot of physical changes, a lot of emotional changes. So it is far more than just bleeding, and we will explore some of it in today's session. Okay, so before I tell you what dignified menstruation is, I want you to use the chat and tell me what you think dignified menstruation is. Maybe like use a few words and tell me. What does menstrual dignity mean for you? Okay, these are some nice answers that I can't see. Respect and appreciation for menstruation. Brilliant. Yes. State of freedom from any form of menstrual discrimination. Prasam Shah. Amazing. Anything else that you guys have to add? Okay. I guess no. So we'll provision of menstrual hygiene products. Yes. Facilities. Living periods like other days. Amazing. Yes. State of freedom. Amazing. So a lot of what you have said, and also uh, dignified menstruation or menstrual dignity, it is a fundamental, basic fundamental need, which means that it's a basic, it's not only a human right, but it is also a need for every menstruator, according to UNICEF. It means that all menstruators have access to safe, affordable menstrual products. So not only affordable, but also safe menstrual products. They have access to menstrual information and education, which means that all the information that's necessary for menstruators to manage their menstruation in a healthy, dignified way. It means that they have access to wash facilities, which means water sanitation and hygiene facilities, which can also mean like, for example, having proper washrooms in schools or workplaces. It also means that they have access to privacy for managing their menstruation, because privacy is a choice and is a right. It also means that they're free from shame, stigma, violence, and discrimination. I think someone from you mentioned that it's a state of freedom from discrimination. A lot of young girls get bullied, they get shamed, they also have to face violence when they're on their period. So menstrual dignity ensures that they're free from that violence, that they're free from that stigma, and that they're able to continue their education and work. So many young girls have to miss their schools, have to drop out of school because of lack of access to wash facilities in schools. So it is important that women have access to these facilities. They are able to continue their education and work with dignity. So if you can see, like, this is a very, very broad definition that encompasses the idea of dignified menstruation. And this is why I say that menstruation is just not bleeding. It's far beyond that. It affects every aspect of a woman or a girl who menstruates. And unfortunately, it's not given enough importance in our society, because we don't talk about it. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to learn about menstruation, but we're going to learn it in a fun way. I'm going to display some questions one by one about menstruation, to see if you know about it, and if you don't, that's absolutely all right. There's space for wrong answers here. So even if, let's say, you don't have the right answer, just in the chat, say whatever you want to. And then we will see what actually is the right answer. So at what age does a girl get a first period? Use the chat and share. What do you think is the age a girl gets her first period? 12 to 15, Sneha says. Santosh says 11 to 14, 10 to 15, 12 to 16, 12 to 15, 11 to 14, 12 to 15. Okay, someone also said 9.5 to 11.5. That's very specific. I like that. I like how specific that is. Okay, amazing. So the average age for menarche is it's the time when a girl gets her first period. The average age is 12 to 13 years. The average age for Nepal is 12.5 to 13. So it can also vary based on where you're based, because there are a lot of different factors that affect. The normal otherwise range is 9 to 16 years of age. If a girl gets a period before 9 or after 16, then there are chances that there is some hormonal imbalance. So this is where it's important to see a doctor. And this information is important for you because a lot of girls or their mothers in the communities will ask you these questions. Okay, let's see the next one. How long is the menstrual cycle? Does anyone know what a menstrual cycle is? Can anyone unmute and share what a menstrual cycle is? Bikash says 28 days. Amazing. 28 days, okay. Okay, 28 days, okay. Can anyone share what a menstrual cycle is? Okay, I'll just share. So the menstrual cycle is the day when your period starts to the next month when your periods restart. So that period is called your menstrual cycle. The average length of menstrual cycle is 28 days, yes, but it can also be from 21 to 35 days. Since every woman, we all are very different. The hormonal changes in our bodies are different. So it can last from 21 to 35 days, and the average is 28 days. So anyone whose menstrual cycle is below 21 or 30 or above 35, it's important that they see a doctor because there could be some hormonal imbalance or some other underlying condition. Okay, Prasamsha says cycle controlled by female hormones. Yes, that's another way to define menstrual cycle. Amazing. How many days does the bleeding last? So in the phase of bleeding, how many days you think the bleeding lasts? 3 to 7 days, okay. 4 to 6, 3 to 5, okay. Average 4, okay. So the average is 5 days, and it can last from 2 to 7 days. So below 2 and above 7 is again a sign of an abnormal menstrual condition, and it's important to see a doctor. How much blood flow is normal? This is going to be interesting. So during one period, how much blood flow is normal? 50 ml, okay. 150 to 200 ml, okay. 80 ml. So it is 2 to 3 tablespoon. 50 ml is also okay. So throughout, so I mean, it might look that there's a lot of blood coming out of our bodies, but it's actually only 2 to 3 tablespoon during an entire period. Like the entire 2, 3, 5 days is normal. Does a girl become an adult the day she gets her first period? What do you guys think? Because, usually we hear this, oh, now she's become an adult. No, and why not? Why do you think that a girl does not become an adult the day it's the start of a new phase? Why not? Why do you think a girl does not become an adult the day she gets her first period? Not mentally, okay. So do you think she physically becomes an adult if not mentally? Is her body capable of bearing a child the day she gets a first period? Absolutely not. Not physically, not mentally, not emotionally. Because puberty is a process. You cannot become an adult overnight. This is a very big misconception in a lot of communities, especially in South Asia. And this is why we also see higher rates of child marriages in some places in South Asia. Yes, exactly, Prasamsha. So while a new phase in her life starts, she does not become an adult, not emotionally, not mentally, even not physically. So which means that while she, she's, so that means she's not ready for marriage and she's not ready for childbearing. And it can be very, very risky for her to conceive a child. Unfortunately, in a lot of communities, we still see this practice, but she does not become an adult the day she gets her first period. Is it risky or dangerous to engage in sports or physical activities during menstruation? What do you guys think? Absolutely no. It's completely normal to engage in any sort of physical activity. Having said that, however, everyone's body is very different. So some women might feel a lot of pain during the menstruation. So some women might be, let's say women, especially like women are used to exercise, or who do exercise in regular days, they continue doing it. So it's very different. So because every woman's body is very different, so it really depends on what you want to do, what you can do. But it's completely normal to engage in sports or physical activities during menstruation, depending on whatever your body allows. Okay. How does the body feel during menstruation? So I want to first listen from men. What do you think? How does the body feel during menstruation? So all the women in the room, please don't respond to this question yet. I want to know if men know how does a woman's body feel during menstruation. Don't Google it, please. I know you're online and you can Google it, but don't Google it. Santosh says faces mood swings. Yes. Kshitij says feelings of cramps at lower abdomen. Mahesh says weak, unhealthy at mood swing. That's okay. I am impressed. Ayesha says tired, weakness, frustrated, and pain. Okay, now the women in the room can also respond. So yes, there are a lot of. So Prasamsha says heavy, weak. Prasamsha, do you want to explain that? What does it mean, heavy and weak? Oh, bloating and weak. Okay, I get it. Pain, mood swings, weakness. Yes. So this is how the body feels. You go through a lot of hormonal changes, a lot of emotional changes. There are a lot of physical symptoms. You can feel pain, you feel irritated, you can feel cramps. And again, because everyone's body is so different, how you feel can also be very different. Most commonly, like most women feel mood swings, they feel cramps, they feel pain, but this can also differ, and we'll discuss this a little more in detail. So Prasamsha says heavy bleeding makes her so dull. Yeah, it is a range of feelings physically, emotionally, that a woman's body feels during menstruation. This could be interesting. What does the period blood consist of? Is it only blood, or does it also have something else?
Excuse me, can you please repeat that question?
The Prasamsha question is, what does the period blood consist of? So does it only have blood, or does it also consist of something else? Blood along with mucus, yes. Dead egg blood. I like that. Dead egg blood. The unfertilized egg, yes. Mucus, yes. Tissues, exactly. All of what you are saying. And this is why we see, like, while the blood is only 3 to 4 tablespoon or 2 to 4 tablespoon, there are a lot other things in that secretion. Okay, amazing. This could be interesting. Is menstrual blood impure or dirty? I mean, it has a lot of things. Who knows? Maybe it's impure. What do you think? Someone did say impure blood. Okay. If it's not impure blood, why are we getting rid of that blood? I think it's impure blood. Okay, it is not impure or dirty blood. Unfortunately, this is a huge misconception. And the reason, and this is why we see a lot of young girls and women, they get secluded from day-to-day activities because people think that menstruation makes your body dirty or impure, or the blood is impure or dirty, or it will bring bad luck to the family, or it will cause disease, blah 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 blah. But according to science, menstrual blood is not impure or dirty. It is just product of a healthy normal process in your body, which I'm sure you all are aware. So there isn't anything impure or dirty in the menstrual blood. From exactly, Selena, thank you for sharing that. Selena says phenomena is similar to bleeding from other wound. So kind of yes, except that the blood is not a product of a wound. It is, it's a product of a normal phenomena, but there isn't anything impure about the blood. Okay, amazing. How many of you, like, I want to stop screen sharing and then see everyone. So how many of you know what premenstrual syndrome is? I'm sure most of you know it because we just talked about it. Can you raise your hand digitally and share if you know what a premenstrual syndrome is? How many of you hate premenstrual syndrome? How many of you like hate it when your body goes through premenstrual syndrome? Some of us, yes, I hate it. Okay. So premenstrual, does anyone wants to share what a premenstrual syndrome is weeks before the menstrual period? Interesting. Yes, Prasamsha, you want to share?
Yeah. So in my condition, the premenstrual syndrome will be feeling upset, anxious, and anxiety, etc.
Feeling upset, feeling anxious. So premenstrual syndrome, as the word says, premenstrual, which means like just before your period, right?
Yeah.
And it's a range of variety of symptoms. It can have mood swings. Sometimes you just don't know what is happening to your body. You feel irritated, and sometimes you say things that you regret later on. And sometimes you feel like you have no control, right? You want to cry, you want to scream. I hear this from a lot of mothers. They tell me sometimes they hate their own kids when they're about to get their period. Imagine, how can you hate your own kids, right? But that's how how PMS can hit you. You feel depressed, you feel fatigued, your breast can also feel a little tender. You can also feel pain in your lower abdomen, sometimes in your knees, in your back. And usually when you have all these symptoms, you would know like, okay, I'm about to get my period in a day or two. So having PMS is normal, but to the extent that it does not interfere with your day-to-day activity. If your mood swings or if your pain, if they interfere with your day-to-day activity so much that you go through extreme pain, you can't walk, then it's so important to see a doctor. Does anyone know what is PMDD? Anyone who knows don't Google it, please. Does anyone know what's PM? Okay. So I'll just write it down in the chat as well. So PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is an extreme form of premenstrual syndrome, where you feel extreme pain, extreme when you feel extreme depression, extreme pain. PMDD is not normal. So while PMS is normal, most women, I would say, will feel some level of pain or anxiety or fatigue, food cravings. You have this sudden craving for sweet sometimes, different kinds of food cravings. But PMDD is not normal. It's the severe form of PMS. And it's so important to see a doctor when, girls and women face PMDD. Okay, perfect. I want to pause and see if you have any questions before we jump into some other content around menstruation. Any question, any reflection? What do you do when you have when you face PMS, like when you're PMSing? What do you do? I also want to hear from men. How do you think you can support women around you when they're PMSing? I want someone to raise their hand and share what they do, what helps them through when they're PMSing. What do men around you do that helps you during your PMS? We're not moving forward unless I get an answer. Okay, Shita says listening to them, sending them good vibe song. I like that. Good vibe songs, amazing. Mahesh says caring and providing sanitary products. I think that's really cool. I have a friend from Bangladesh who keeps menstrual products in his bag because he travels in a train, and so he keeps it, just in case any friend or any colleague of his needs it, which I think was really nice. By providing dairy milk, Prasamsha, I think that helps a lot. Santosh says taking care of her. Santosh, can you also elaborate how? Upson or Apson, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing name right, but say making her favorite dishes. Amazing. Nishma says hot water bag or ice compressed to reduce cramps. Amazing. Listening my silly gossips, saying yes to everything, even my answer will be wrong, says Prasamsha. I can relate with that. So you would also see a lot of women take over the counter medication for their PMS, which might just not be the right idea. So while so even when you go into these communities, these girls will ask you if they can take medication, what kind of medication. So some painkiller, depending on what your doctor prescribe is okay, but you will find a lot of girls, especially in communities, who will be taking extreme medication for their PMS, or maybe they'll be going through PMDD, but they would not know. So it's so important that you tell them that it's important to go and see a doctor, because sometimes, especially in the case of PMDD, this could also be a result of an underlying condition. So some medication could make it even more severe. Listening to all silly okay, we're done. Okay, perfect. So that's it with the PMS, PMDD. What we're going to do is we're going to change the gear of the conversation, and we're going to learn about the menstrual cycle, like all 4 phases of menstrual cycle. I think most people here are medical professionals, so maybe you would be teaching me a little on this as well, because I'm not a medical professional. But how many of you know how many phases of, oh, I was almost giving the answer away. How many phases of menstrual cycle there are? Write in the chat. Don't Google it. I trust you people. I know you will not. 4, okay. 3, as you said, 4. Yeah, Vikash. I was like, how many phases of menstrual cycle there are? 4. Right. Can you name those 4 phases? Okay. We'll see if someone names it. Especially like, so my question is for women now, but then I'll ask a question for men too. How many of you are aware of what happens to your body in each of that phase? Okay, so bleeding phase, pre-ovulatory, post-ovulatory, that's the best way to define it. So how many of you are aware of how your body feels like in each of the phase? And how many of you know that if you know what happens to your body during those phases, you can actually structure your life around that to make the most out of, like to make the most out of your productive phase? Has anyone done it? Has anyone explored how your body feels when you can be most productive? I'm assuming no. So this is going to be interesting. And even for men, I think they will understand why women feel different in a particular time each month. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. Let me share my screen and see if we can go through it. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, so I think some of you named these right, but you can also find different terminology used for these phases. So the first phase, okay, is the follicular phase. This is like very simplified version of what happens in the phase, but if you want to explore like more biology, you can. I have not gone into a lot of depth into the biology of each phase, but I'm also only like mostly going to talk about how your body feels like in each phase. So follicular phase is when the egg develops in the phase, and it usually is on an average it's from 10 to 14 days, depending on how long is your menstrual cycle. So it depends on, is it 28 days, 21, depending on that. In this phase your hormonal levels rapidly increase, so you suddenly feel a boost in energy. So if you reflect back, there are times every month you would feel, oh, I can take on the world. You feel like you're the most productive. You feel like I want to climb a mountain. You are like you would start something off. So this is that phase, because since like your hormonal levels rapidly increase, you have a boost in energy, you want to take on new challenges. So in this phase it is best to take on creative projects. So let's say if you want to start something new, this is the phase where you should be doing. This is the best time for productivity throughout your menstrual phase. Oh, sorry, throughout your menstrual cycle. After follicular phase comes ovulation phase, which is basically where your endometrium lining thickens. So this phase is, so ovulation is like only one day, but you can build off that energy for next 3-4 days. In this particular phase, you are at your best in your communication and collaboration skills. So you feel like socializing with people. And have you experienced, like, this is the phase where you make all your plans. You're like, oh, I want to hang out with people, I want to socialize. So you feel like calling up your friends, you make plans with them, but you don't realize that your phase of this socializing phase will be over in let's say in 2 to 3 days. So when the actual planned days come, you're like, oh, I don't want to go. So this is what actually happens. So this is the phase when let's say if you want to do any group meetings, when you want to talk to clients, this is the phase where you'll be at best of your social skills. In your luteal phase is when the egg gets released. So in this phase, what happens is that in the beginning both your hormones rise, but if pregnancy doesn't happen, there's a dramatic drop in your hormonal level. So So in the beginning, you might feel okay, you want to get some work done, but towards the end, you might feel like you don't want to do anything. So sometimes you might make a plan, a meetup plan in the ovulation phase and put a date for that meetup in the luteal phase. But unfortunately, when you enter your luteal phase, you're like, I don't want to meet people because of the sudden, because of the drop of hormonal level. And then comes the menstrual phase. It's when your period starts. In this phase, usually your hormones are at low, so you feel very less energetic, very less productive. um, so it's best that in this phase you lower your burden of your work. You try not to fill up your calendar. And interestingly, in this phase, your right and left brain, they're communicating powerfully. So you are like a lot more intuitive, a lot more reflective. So you can use this phase on reflecting on, your past month. Take Do a lot of self-care in this phase. Take a break in this phase. Pamper yourself. And even like men who are listening to it, this is the right phase when you want to pamper women around you, whether your sisters, your mothers, your partners, your friends. This is the phase where they need the most pampering. I want to pause and see if you have any questions around it. Did you guys know about all this? Like, did you know how your menstrual cycle functions and how there's different emotions going on in each phase? Yes, no, maybe. No. Okay. So mostly no. Okay. So mostly no. So this is a very powerful tool, and do share it with even the young girls that you do these sessions with, because they find it very empowering.
Information to the women or the girls in different communities. Yeah. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you so much for adding that, Kamala. I think it's very important to share that information with young girls. So moving on, uh, I do want to share briefly about some menstrual disorders, because again, um, people are going to ask you a lot of questions around different conditions, and they might not be aware like what's normal, what's not normal. So we're going to discuss those briefly, because we also want to jump into some of the societal challenges, some of the cultural challenges around menstruation. So let me share some screen again. Okay. So the different menstrual disorders that women can face, some women can face. We talked about like what's normal and what's not normal. And anytime you meet a young girl who you think might be facing one of these disorder, it's so important that they go and see a doctor, because this could a lot of these disorders can be again due to underlying conditions, which can be very severe or could lead to some very severe conditions. And usually it is considered a taboo to go to a gynecologist if you're unmarried. In a lot of cultural settings, women or girls don't go to gynecologist because they think, you go to a gynecologist only when you are pregnant. So there's a lot of taboo attached to it. But you can see a gynecologist for a lot of other reasons too. And menstrual disorders is when, ideally you should be going to a gynecologist or to a doctor. So for example, like one of the menstrual disorder is amenorrhea, which is absence of menstruation. This could be primary or secondary. In again, primary means that you have not had your menstrual period since birth, this could be secondary, where I mean you're missing one or more menstrual periods. Usually, if you're missing your period, if not had your period for 3 months, this could be a sign of amenorrhea. The second menstrual disorder is oligomenorrhea, which means that you have infrequent menstrual periods or irregular menstrual periods. So, for example, a woman could be having, maybe she's having periods after, let's say, 2 months, or sometimes she's having periods after 28 days. Sometimes she's having periods after 2 months. For young girls, when they get their first period, it is normal for them to have irregular periods for some times, because it's a new phase and system in the body, so it takes time for the periods to become regular. But after some time, the expectation is that the periods will become regular. If not, this could be oligomenorrhea, where it's important that they see a doctor. Another disorder is when they have significantly heavier periods. So, for example, you there are a lot of young girls who complain of having periods, of having bleeding for 10 days straight, or having, let's say, periods like like after 15 days, which is not normal, because we learned that the normal cycle is 21 to 35 days. Or there's also a condition where they can have painful periods and severe menstrual cramps. As we discussed, having some some cramps or having some pain is normal, but if it is so much that you cannot function, you cannot do your everyday activities, it's a menstrual disorder, and it is very important to go and see a doctor. um, how many of you know what are PCOs? Kamala, do you want to share about PCOs?
Sure. So PCOS is basically a condition where a woman um, struggles to get a normal period cycle. So this happens because of the hormonal imbalance, um, basically hormonal imbalance of in a person's body. So you suffer, struggle with a lot of things, and basically you happen, as I mentioned earlier, you constantly have this mood swings. There is no particular phase, there is no particular cycle. You constantly get this mood swings. You constantly get, your appetite is completely disturbed. Your sleeping pattern, your basically how you react to certain situations, your stress level, everything gets absolutely disturbed. And that's when the other health conditions also gets started. When you're not sleeping properly, or when you're not eating the right food, or get the right consultation or right suggestions from the experts as well. So you just need to understand what your body is seeking, or how your body is reacting to certain situation. Yeah.
And it's a lot about lifestyle changes as well, and a lot of young girls are not aware of it. So thank you so much for sharing that, Kamala. It's very unfortunate that it's misdiagnosed, and I think it is also a reflection point for all of us, that despite so many progression in modern science and health, there isn't like any solid solution for PCOs, which shows the dearth of research, the dearth of investment that goes into reproductive health or menstrual health. And a lot of times, I think people don't even have access to specialized doctors who. So, for example, usually for your hormonal problems, you go to an endocrinologist, right? So, a lot of people don't even know that a doctor like that exists, or where to see such a doctor. So it's just a reflection point of where we stand when it comes to menstrual health. So, Kriti, do you want to add something? Go ahead, please.
Uh, Kamala, they added about the use of OCPs, but it actually has medical basis for giving OCPs. It's not just like randomly prescribing OCPs. Like OCPs consist of mainly estrogen hormone and progesterone hormone, like we talked about in the menstrual cycle, which is very important hormone. That is what causes our uterus to bleed, the uterus to ovulate, for ovulation and all that. And giving that androgen hormone is rampantly going around in your body, and that causes the ovary to form cyst. Like, cyst is basically fluid filled, it's not a mass, it's like a balloon, it's type of a balloon, with fluid filled in it. And giving estrogen and progesterone combination, it actually helps to regulate the menstrual cycle, because it is very irregular, like we talked about, and the symptoms as well. And also it will help to decrease the testosterone level in our body. So that's why OCPs are prescribed. And I think the scenario of the management of PCOS is changing rapidly, because I've seen our teachers who have been constantly consulting many girls who have been facing PCOS. And yeah, finding a good doctor is very difficult. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Like, OCPs, they're not just prescribing OCPs rampantly. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so can I take that, Aisha? Yeah. So thank you, Sukriti. I completely agree with that. But I was just wondering, when the same solution is not actually curing your problem, or when you're taking the contraceptive pills for a longer period of time, then it definitely has some side effects, right? So when so basically, I was just talking about that. So that's something that we all have to, face until there is a permanent solution to this problem.
Thank you so much,
Uh,
Sukriti and Kamala.
PCOS is not actually a treatable disease, because it is based on genetic factors as well. So there is a different term we use. Like, one is treatable, another is manageable. So PCOS falls under manageable type. If you just mitigate the symptoms and prevent further complications, so that's why there is not definitive treatment for PCOS.
Thank you so much, Sukriti, for adding it, and thank you so much, Kamala, for sharing your experience. I think that it is so important for young girls to understand what PCOS are, what their body is going through, and have access to doctors. Because, as I was mentioning, that it is a lot about lifestyle change, which unfortunately a lot of young girls don't know. And also, there's a lot of lack of research, a lack of data, a lack of investment into menstrual health. Who knows, maybe there's a treatment for PCOS, but we've not invested enough, right? But thank you so much for adding these reflections. I would like to now pause, and so we have discussed about what menstruation is, what menstrual disorders are, what is normal, what is not normal. Please keep all this with you, because when you go into these communities, people will ask you questions. People will want to have solutions for their menstrual disorders, but please refrain from prescribing anything. Please refrain from suggesting anything that you don't know. Unless you are actually are in that particular field. So the idea is that when you go into these communities, you normalize conversations around menstrual health, and tell them what is normal, what is not normal, when they should go and see a doctor. So please keep all of this with you. And we'll shift the gear of the conversations, and now we'll jump into the next part, which is what happens when you go into the communities, when you go and discuss about menstrual health, when you try to challenge the stigma and taboo. So can we hear about some menstrual taboos or menstrual myths that you have experienced or you have heard from your communities? Can you share a menstrual myth or taboo that you have heard or experienced in your own community? Or maybe you have not experienced, but you have heard of. Maybe like all the men, if you've not experienced it, maybe you have seen something that you should not do this during menstruation, you should not do this, you should do this. What are some realities of menstruation in the communities you come from? We can't go to the temple, it's a very common one. You can't offer prayers, not allowed to worship. Yes, that's something that's very, very true to Pakistani context as well. Not allowed to kitchen, touching the male members. That's something that I've read, that because the idea is that you're maybe impure, so you can't touch the male members. kitchen and put tika. Eating sour foods and will worsen menstrual cramps is something that we hear of. And how many of you think it is true that you should not eat anything that's sour, that interferes with your menstrual cramps? Oh, it's Kamala. Okay. How many of you think that's true? I know Ayusha is smiling, so maybe. So I remember I was told that you cannot put nail color because the nail color will dry up, is something that I heard. Anything else that you have, that you've heard of? Not allowed to be in home, girls are put in cow shelter or animal shelter. Yes, that's something that we're going to talk about. It's a very common practice in Western Nepal, mostly. Not to cut nails and hair. I've also heard that one menstrual myth that I've commonly heard is that you should not eat anything that's white, eat anything that's sour, eat anything that's dairy. Yeah, which pretty much is everything, like pretty much that's in our diet. Like you can't eat dairy, you can't eat something that's white, you can't eat anything that's sour, that's sour. You can't touch men in the family during my period. The lifeline will get shorter. Interesting. That's the first one. Um, I've also heard that you can't go camping because the animals will smell blood and will attack you. Is something that I've heard. So all of this, what you are sharing, are menstrual myths that affect the quality of life that women have. So, for example, it's a very common myth in Pakistan that you should not take shower during 7 days, like when you are menstruating, which means if you don't take a shower when you're menstruating, imagine that is a risk to your health and hygiene. You can't touch the plants. So all of this, all these menstrual myths are the realities that our communities operate in, unfortunately. And if you see, there are a lot of dietary restrictions that are put on young girls and women during menstruation. In fact, for younger girls, it's even more important to have, to have like proper nutrition and diet, because that's such a growing age. But at that age, they are put through a lot of dietary restrictions. Women are secluded from daily life activities. A lot of women are asked to live in separate huts, or stay away from kitchen or stay away from home. So if you see, you're pretty much ostracizing women from living a normal healthy life, only because people think that menstruation is something impure, menstruation is something dirty, and also because there aren't enough conversations around this topic. So if you tell a young girl not to take shower for 7 days, she will not take the shower, because there is no other way she can verify that information, because we don't talk about it. So they keep asking their friends who have limited knowledge. And this is why it is so important to normalize conversations around menstruation, dignified menstruation, and menstrual health, so girls and women can live a productive life, can challenge these myths, can challenge these harmful practices. um, Before we do a group activity, I want to share, I think you might already be aware of this practice called Chopadi. Am I pronouncing it right? No?
Yeah,
How
it's
do you pronounce?
Chopadi.
Chopadi? Chopadi. Okay. How many of you are aware of this practice? This is very specific to Nepalese context. Sukriti, Khushbu. Khushbu, do you want to share what it is?
Hello, am I audible?
You are, absolutely.
It's mostly practiced in the western part of our country, where women and girls, when they are having their menstrual period, they are forced to live in the hot outside, in the cold weather, and they are especially allowed to live in a hut, especially made for that purpose, and where they will have a little ventilation system, and of course there will be no proper security for them, and not a proper lights, and many different factors that are lacking, which is affecting their health. And obviously it's not a good practice, but it's still a tradition and people are still following it. So that's.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Sukriti, you also raised your hand. Do you have something to add to that?
Especially it is more common in our far western side of our country, and there has been projects from government of Nepal as well to
Yeah.
abolish this type of tradition, but people are still following it, and there has been so many number of, even though the number is decreasing, there are still so many cases where people have died, the women have died from snake bites, from cold, from suffocation, from carbon monoxide poisoning, because there is no proper ventilation. And yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing. Rita, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So past year I got an opportunity to visit Far West, especially Tarai region for a small project. So as we have been hearing a lot about Thopri Pratha, I really wanted to stay there, and I really want to know like how actually they feel and how does it actually look like. So it was a small hut with no windows, with no doors. It was made by mud. And it especially there were a lot of straws inside, and there was a small lamp. And since it was during summer it was extremely hot even at the night. And I'm not so sure is that a tradition or what yet, but even it's hot there, people usually just burn the straws and sit around the circle and eat, even during the morning and even at the evening time. So usually when we are staying inside the property, there's no window and there's only a small door. All the as they have been burning the straws nearby, all the smokes comes inside and it's really hard to breathe. So for the few days it was really hard for me to breathe, and slowly I started adjusting to the situation. And even during the night it's really hard to find young people there, and it's really find to find someone to communicate, to understand you. So even I really wanted to stay there and just to see that how does it feel. And it was really hard for me to stay there. And during the night, it was so scary that I couldn't stay there. I could only stay there inside it 2 days. So I even can't imagine that how young girls stay there for years and years inside it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rita, for sharing your experience, and for for showing the courage of bringing this experience to the space. It, as you said, it's a very, very difficult process that young girls go through for no reason, for absolutely no reason. It's which is it's inhumane, it's unnecessary, it's a threat to safety and well-being of all the girls who are put through it. Devanshi, I want to see if you want to add something before we move on.
Thank you. As being from the far western part of Nepal, as a Thopri Pratha is an ancient tradition practice in the far western country of Nepal. So, it is a tradition practiced by girls and women in Nepal during a menstruations, living in a small hut or a cow shed. So we, while going to the hilly regions of Nepal of far western sides, so while visiting there, we can find a small place, and while going there, I have asked the girl, "What is this? It is a cow shed or a buffalo shed?" Then she replied that this is just a place where we have to live during our menstruation. Literally, it was a small place without a window. So while in the summer the girls have to suffer from the hotness in that, and we can't get a good oxygen to take to breathe. So it's a type of a danger, and a mini, it's so far from the house. So girls have to stay there for 5 to 7 days of each month, so that they can it's believed that they will otherwise bring their family bad luck or ill health while staying in the house. While staying in the house during a menstruation, the father can have a small leave of a life. They are not allowed there to drink anything, like they are not allowed there to drink the milks. They are not allowed there to go inside the house when they are in menstruation. So it is a it involves the banishing peoples after often young girls to mud huts or seats for a duration of the periods or even a longer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devyanshi, for sharing that. And as you have already shared, like how uncomfortable and how difficult it is for women to stay there. It was the government of Nepal has already declared this practice illegal. In 2005, the government of Nepal passed a law um, declaring this practice illegal. There have been other laws that have put, so for example, in 2017, a law was passed that set penalties for people practicing it, sending them to prison for up to 3 months. But unfortunately, it is still widely practiced. And a lot of studies show that around 70 to 80% women in Western Nepal are still forced to stay in these huts during their menstruation or after childbirth. So, like in two cases. And as you mentioned, it has severe negative effects on emotional, physical, mental well-being. Um, Young girls also have to manage their own food while they're in those huts, because they're not allowed to touch food, so they're not even given any food. They have to find a way to survive somehow. And imagine 11-year-old girl, suddenly being asked to go and remain in a hut and manage her own food. So many girls have been subject to rape, snake bites, animal bites, and even death during their seclusion. It's a very it's I mean the universal, like the organizations, there have been so much advocacy and activism around it, but the harsh reality is that the practice still remains, and so do a lot of other practices that might not, let's say, be secluding women or putting them into huts, but are an encroachment on right of women, women's safety, their health, their education, their well-being, their access to menstrual products, their access to menstrual information. What we'll do now is, now that we have had some discussion on some practices in Nepal or South Asia, you're also aware of, some details on menstruation. For the next stage, what you will be doing is you will be brainstorming and reflecting on how you can take all this and initiate conversations around menstrual health in the communities you'll be working with. How to create safe spaces, how to challenge how to challenge menstrual myths, how to provide that information in a age appropriate way. What would be your audience? Will you be only talking to girls? Will you be talking to their parents? Will you be talking to men? Will you be talking to their teachers? So whatever you have in your mind, in the next few minutes, you will be working in groups to brainstorm on strategies you'll be using and how you'll be taking this information into their communities. Before that, I want to see, Kamla, do you have something to discuss or share before we send them into breakout rooms?
Not really. We can send them to the breakout room.
Okay, perfect. I will quickly share my screen so that you can know what you have to do. If you have any questions, any confusion, please feel free to ask before you go into your breakout rooms. Any questions, any underlying comments that you have?
Yeah, can you please repeat that question that we recently talked about?
I will. I'll share my screen and then you can take a picture of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No question, no confusion. You guys are pros, by the way. You are medical professionals. You already are doing such amazing work and a very difficult one. It's very difficult to become a doctor. And even if there's someone who's not a medical professional here or a medical student here, I'm sure you're amazing. So let me quickly share my screen and then I'll explain again what you will be doing. Okay. So in your groups, what you have to do is you have to plan a community session on menstrual health. I will share link to a Jamboard. In that Jamboard, you can use that Jamboard to brainstorm, to reflect. If you think that maybe that Jamboard is not very useful, you can use whatever tool you want. You can even write these down on a notepad. You can write your answers or write your plan down on WordPad, Google document, whatever works for you. So in your discussion, consider these following questions. How would you create a safe space? So for example, if you go into a community and initiate a conversation around menstrual health, how you will ensure that that's a safe space for people to discuss a topic that is deeply stigmatized. What kinds of activities would you do? Would you, let's say, do an open discussion? Would you do theater? Would you show them videos? Would you do a Q&A? Whatever you think is appropriate. What are some broad topics you would cover? So we discussed a lot of topics. I don't think it will be possible for you to share everything with them, but what broad topics you think would be most practical and important for your communities? Where will you do this session? Would this be in an urban setting, in a rural setting, in a school, or in a community? And who will be your audience? Would you do this with girls, with boys, with parents, or with teachers? Is that okay? Is that clear? Okay, perfect. So Kamala, I think we'll send them for 10 minutes.
Yes.
All the best. I'm looking forward to some amazing reflections. Should I stop the screen share? Okay. I think there's still people who might not be around, right?
Yeah.
I think they haven't addressed received the Jamboard link?
No, I've shared.
Yeah.
Prakriti, I've shared the link in our WhatsApp group.
But every one of them are not there, so
So maybe I'll enter each.
I'll go to each room.
Yeah, confirm.
So
Yeah.
so group board 1 is for group 1, board 2 is for group 2. But they're not, if they want to use some other tool, they can use the Jamboard in some other session. So what we'll do is we will take one speaker per breakout room who can just summarize in 1 minute of just like the high level highlights of what you guys discussed. So can we have someone from breakout room number 1? Yes, Prashamsa.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm from representative from breakout number 1. We had our members, 8 members, and we discussed about the questions. For the safe space, we concluded that we should do focus group discussion on menstruation, because the adolescent girls hesitate to talk about it in front of parents, boys, teachers. So for creating the safe space, we should create first comforting environment for them to talk more about it. And the activities we can use during our while providing knowledge is that medias we can use. We can use demonstration videos about how to use sanitary pads, and about new sanitary pads, tampons, menstruational cups, as and the topics we will discuss are PCOS, about normal and abnormal condition of the menstruation, and the place where we will teach about it is school, where we will get adolescent girls, and we will teach about it for the teachers also, because in our Nepali school, teachers mostly skip the chapters of the menstruation, reproductive health. So we should teach the teachers first, and they will teach the other girls, boys, and even with parents. Thank you.
Amazing. We can all give her a round of applause or heart, whatever suits you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you talked about demo videos for menstrual products. That's an amazing way. You also talked about the importance of teaching teachers, parents, and engaging men in conversations. It's same in Pakistan. Teachers skip the reproductive system chapter. So I think, yeah, we have a lot in common when it comes to these things. But yeah, amazing discussion. Can we hear from group number 2 now? Breakout room number 2.
Yeah. So I'm representing our group 2. So as all mentioned that we had a less time to discuss and we were more in numbers. So something that adding to the group 1, something that is new to our group is while creating a safe space, it always depends on how you take things slowly and gradually to build a trust in the community or among even the adolescent girls and boys. So maybe we can start our activity by a icebreaker, maybe by a introduction as we had today in our session, and maybe resembling things and connecting dots to the menstruation as well. On this spreadsheet, another thing is like maybe creating the classroom guideline or community guideline, as not taking the some of the stories that might come up after during the session, not to take outside the classroom, and then and to respect each other's values like that. So some of the board topics we really want to cover in our session is menstrual hygiene management among the and we have also planned we also think that school health program can be also a major important role to teach both the young girls, even the boys as well. And something that just popped on my mind when we were discussing was, most of the time we often focus on the rural areas, because yes, it is more important to focus on rural areas. Now something that is think about is, there is a lot of ways that menstrual taboo has been modernized in a different way in an urban areas. Most of the people these days, even we myself as well, I don't usually share about my periods to my parents, because I use menstrual cup and it is hard to find them if I'm in my periods or not. So we often hide, so that we can participate in the family functions, or go to the temples or like that. Just not that because we are afraid to talk with our parents, but to some extent that we think that as they do have a different belief, the steps that we are taking might hurt their feelings, might hurt their beliefs, and we don't want that. So that is somehow not leading to a dignified menstruation that we really want to. So that might be some point that we can think about in future. So yeah, these were the main things we had a discussion in our group. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rita, for sharing some really important points. Again, we can give it a round of applause or heart, whatever works for you. I love the idea of making it safe, fun space, because again, usually when we talk about menstruation, we talk about there's mostly a lot of negative that you hear in the community. So just changing the narrative, making it fun, making it activity based is something that can really help girls and women open up about menstruation. So that's a great way. I like that you also talked about confidentiality of in a session, that whatever is shared stays within there, because that's again, it's some people might not be comfortable if their stories are shared outside. So yeah, amazing, thank you. Let's hear from breakout room number 3. Do we have anyone from breakout number 3? Alina, yes.
Good evening, everyone. Representing the breakout room number 3, our group discussion answers is, to create a safe space, we'll first let them share our experience. We'll make the environment friendly so that they could also share their experience. What kind of activities will we do? We will do demonstrations of using sanitary pads. We will do drama. We will perform mini lectures. And what are the some broad topics you would like to cover? The broad topics we like to cover include safe menstrual hygiene, physiological changes during periods, signs and symptoms. And we'd like to perform this session on the school, targeting the adolescent girls. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alina. I love that you talked about doing using different ways, drama, using lectures. And I think one thing that you said is sharing your own experience. That is very, very important. When you share your own experience, people can relate with you. And at the same time, you can also share your learning experience. You can share, okay, I also thought maybe menstruation is not a normal process if you thought so. But then when I found out it's a normal process, so sharing your learning experience can also help people, okay, they can also learn and grow. So I think you guys say that the time was not enough. I think it was perfectly enough, because you did a very good job in discussing all the questions. So let's hear from the last breakout room, which is breakout room number 5. Do we have anyone from there?
Hi, this is Sukriti representing
Yes.
group number 5. The main highlight, all the other things that we talked before, they were kind of similar. The main thing that we found would be more effective was conducting a session for male members of the family separately, because when we ourselves talk about our body, when what is happening with us, we feel ashamed. Sometimes we'll think like, oh, what might that person think about when I ask such question. So imagine us imagine asking about someone else's body, what's going in their body. So if we conduct a different different set of program for only male members of the family, that might be brother or father, then they will be at comfort to ask about what they actually have queries about. I think that is very important, because if we keep men and women together in a community, the group discussion, if it's about menstruation, mostly if in what I have felt is, when I go around in community, that our aunties, our mothers, grandmothers, they won't talk because there is a male present in the community. And same goes for male as well. When they see there are other people around, they will be like, oh no, like I should not ask this question. They won't ask what they are actually wanting to learn. So I think creating a different group for male members first, so that they can then we can normalize them. Okay, this is normal, then we can bring them together to conduct the session jointly. So that is our highlight of the discussion.
I think it's a very, very important point that you have raised, that depending on the cultural setting, it might be more appropriate to do this separately. And a lot of times, maybe perhaps men will also not be comfortable learning from a woman about menstrual health or about, puberty. So you need to be mindful of, what is the reality of the community that you are going into. Maybe perhaps we might be comfortable in this setting, having both men and women in the same space, but maybe perhaps a lot of communities won't be. So thank you so much. We can give Sukriti and her breakout room a heart or a round of applause, whatever works for you. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating actively through chat, through audio, and also through groups, and for sharing your own experiences, sharing your own reflections, sharing what you would do. Before I pass it to Kamala, and before I want to share a few tips that I have learned through my experience of working in menstrual health. You can see if these tips work for you, if they make sense to you. If I think you have already covered some of it, so that's great. But I want to leave you with some of these points when you go in for doing these community sessions. First, it's important that you believe that menstruation is a normal process. It's very important that you own that narrative, because if you don't own that narrative, you will not be able to bring a change in the communities that you go into, and that you believe that there isn't anything shameful about menstruation. It's very, very important that you first believe in it before you go and teach the communities. It's also important that you immerse in the communities that you're working with, which means that, let's say, if it's not your own community, and if it's another community, it's important that you understand the cultural context of it. I think Sukriti gave a very good example of how important it is to know the cultural context, to know what are the practices there, to know what are the myths there, to know what are the needs of that community, in terms of like what kind of menstrual access they need. So it's important that you do your research first, so you don't look someone who's an outsider to the community, because the communities will not be willing to listen to you if they cannot relate with you, and they can only relate with you when you truly understand them. Again, understand their community specific needs. That's something that I mentioned. If it's a community you don't belong to, find someone that the community trusts. So let's say, if you're not from the community, if the community doesn't know you, find someone who they know and who they trust. Because when you go into a community to talk about a topic that has been deeply stigmatized, it is important that they see a face they can rely on, that they can trust, if you are not that person. Create a safe learning space. I think you guys have nailed that, how to create a safe learning space, make it a reflection, an activity based space, bring some fun into it. Be mindful of the terminology that you use. This is very, very important. A lot of communities in Pakistan that I worked with, they usually call menstruation a disease, or they call it something problematic. If you use that some terminology, you will be reinforcing the mindset that you want to change. So it's important that you're very mindful of what you are saying, and be patient and respectful. uh, menstrual stigma has been there for decades. It is going to be a very slow change process. It's going to take a lot of time. You have to be very patient. Chances are that how the communities see menstrual health is not going to change overnight and through one session. But maybe something will change in some people who will be there. Maybe they'll start thinking about it. So you have to be patient, and you also have to be respectful. I know, like, a lot of times, some things that we hear about menstruation feel very uncomfortable, right? And they don't feel right. But at the same time, you have to be respectful to the community if you want to work with them, if you want them to see as your allies and not someone who's there to challenge their cultural practices. So you have to be respectful when you try to educate them on menstrual health. That is it from my side. Since we've gone over time, I want to pause here with a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the work that you're doing, for the work that Prakriti and Kamala and her team are doing. If you have any questions and concerns when you do these community sessions, I'm sharing my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. If something today did not make sense, and if you want to have a conversation, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, all the best for the rest of your journeys. Back to you, Kamala.
Thank you, Ayesha. So everyone, once again, it was my pleasure to be here today as the moderator of this session. So now I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to our speaker for sharing her valuable insights and knowledge with us today. So Ayesha, your contribution to this session has been truly enlightening and inspiring. As a token of appreciation, I'd like to present you our virtual token of appreciation. It is a small, basically it is a small symbol of our gratitude and recognition for your valuable time, hard work, and dedication to be here today and share your knowledge with Hamro Bahini community. So we hope that this token of appreciation will serve as a reminder of this meaningful session and the impact you have made on our understanding of the topic dignified menstruation. Once again, thank you for your time and effort. Your contributions have been invaluable. And we are honored to have you here with us today. So I hope this session has been tremendously, I enjoyed this session a lot personally. I hope our soon-to-be champions also got to learn a lot from this session. We can have a moment to discuss your feedback and reflections if there are any. Once again, thank you so much, Ayesha.
Can I just say that token of appreciation is such a cute addition to these sessions? Very creative. Thank you so much. I do have to jump off for another meeting, so I'll leave you guys with them, and feel free to reach out if you have any question. I had the most amazing time speaking with everyone. Goodbye. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
Thank you.